An Oregon court decision finds some regulations for the state's climate program are invalid. What the ruling could mean for the state as Oregon strives for a low-carbon energy future. Plus, a new initiative in California aims to turn wastewater into drinking water. We'll have more on how the plan could offer a solution in confronting the challenges of a crucial depleting resource. And in Colorado, 5 gray wolves are now able to call a remote section of the Rocky Mountains home. We'll talk about what led to their reintroduction into the wild. Hello and welcome to EarthX News, where we focus on sustainability and the environment. I'm Christina Thompson. Let's get into some of the biggest headlines facing our planet. The Oregon Court of Appeals decided that a state program designed to limit and drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel companies is invalid. The program, which started in 2022, is one of the strongest climate programs in the nation. The court says the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality's Climate Protection Program failed to comply with disclosure requirements when adopting rules under the Federal Clean Air Act. The Climate Protection Program adds limits on greenhouse gas emissions from oil and natural gas companies, with a target of 90% reduction by 2050. The program also allows for fossil fuel suppliers to reduce emissions through the program's Community Climate Investment Credit Program. According to the Department of Environmental Quality, the decision is limited to administrative mistake and is not effective immediately. Environmentalists say this is a step backwards in relation to net zero, but agree this ruling doesn't undermine the department's authority to set emissions limits on the oil and gas industry. Fossil fuel companies in Oregon sued the program back in March 2022, arguing the agency exceeded its authority by creating the rules. They wanted to block the program entirely. One of the petitioners said in a statement that it was pleased with the court's decision and remains committed to moving towards a low-carbon energy future. New Mexico environmental officials have proposed a new regulatory framework for reusing wastewater, focusing on the byproducts of oil and natural gas drilling in the state. The proposal aims to address water demands and protect freshwater aquifers amid drought conditions. The goal is to provide a supply of treated water for various industrial uses, like microchip manufacturing and hydrogen production. New Mexico, the #2 state for oil production behind Texas, is looking to its energy sector and water-intensive fracking as a potential source of treated water for industrial applications, and to offset water demands that are depleting freshwater aquifers amid droughts. Critics are worried that the plan might encourage more petroleum drilling. There are also concerns about water overuse, including depletion of the vast underground aquifers that sustains communities in eastern New Mexico and extends to the Dakotas and Wyoming. California is set to become the second state to okay turning wastewater into drinking water, meaning water from sinks, showers, bathtubs, toilets, washing machines, and dishwashers can be treated and end up right back in your drinking glass. California regulators voted to let water agencies recycle wastewater and put it back into the pipes that carry drinking water to homes, schools, and businesses. The Golden State has struggled for decades to have reliable sources of drinking water for its more than 39 million residents. California has been through multiple extreme droughts, including the most recent one that scientists say was the driest 3-year period on record and left the state's reservoirs at dangerously low levels. So now they're getting creative. Wastewater in California, it's been recycled and reused for decades for things like irrigation, ice skating rinks, and even artificial snow. The difference is California's new rules would require wastewater be treated for all pathogens and viruses, even if the pathogens and viruses aren't in the wastewater. California says the treatment is so stringent it removes all of the minerals that make fresh water taste good, meaning they have to be added back at the end of the process. Now, it's very expensive and time-consuming to build these treatment facilities, so this will only be an option for bigger, more well-funded cities, at least at first. So that includes San Diego, where city officials have a plan to build a water recycling program that they say would account for nearly half the city's water by 2035. And agencies will, of course, need to tell customers about the recycled water before they start doing it. The growth of the hydrogen power industry is raising a question: how to cleanly power the production of the clean energy. The Biden administration has released proposed guidance for the hydrogen credit created through the Inflation Reduction Act in an effort to encourage hydrogen fuel production with a climate-friendly approach. The guidance includes requirements for companies to qualify for the hydrogen credit, such as relying on relatively new low-emission energy, adhering to geographic and time-based constraints on hydrogen production energy sources, and meeting labor standards. The proposed rules aim to prevent a surge in energy use from existing, less environmentally friendly power sources and ensure that the hydrogen production process is environmentally sustainable. Industries will need to rely on either clean power sources initiated within the last 3 years or new power capacity added to existing power sources to meet geographic limitations. This clean power must come from the same region as the facility producing the hydrogen. The time matching mandate will require any clean power consumed to be generated within the same hour it is used. By 2028, companies will have to switch from year-based matching to by the hour. Treasury representatives say these restrictions didn't come from Congress and could threaten to steer investment elsewhere, which would harm effort to reduce emissions in hard-to-decarbonize industry sectors. The Treasury is trying to troubleshoot, including coming up with a process for incorporating existing nuclear plants into the credit guidance, as well as existing hydropower, biomass facilities, and fossil-based sites with carbon capture attached. The Biden administration is giving Louisiana regulators new power to attract and approve carbon capture projects. Louisiana will be able to issue permits for wells that store carbon dioxide, a critical component of carbon capture and removal technology. In most other states, the Environmental Protection Agency is responsible for permitting. Those in support of the change say it will speed up approvals of new projects that are critical for reducing climate-warming greenhouse gas emissions. However, environmental groups are skeptical. They say they doubt that a state with such concentrated stretches of oil, gas, and petrochemical plants, commonly called Cancer Alley, is capable of proper industry oversight as well as safeguarding residents. First responders in Iowa are fearing the danger and uncertainties about emergency planning and response strategies surrounding CO2 pipelines. If a pipeline were to rupture, first responders say they won't be able to carry out rescue operations because of outdated and improper equipment, inadequate evacuation plans, and lack of personnel and training. One chief concern is CO2 is heavier than normal air, and if released, it acts as an asphyxiant in high concentrations, which means firefighters need heavier-duty, longer-lasting air tanks. The tanks necessary to respond to a disaster like a pipeline bursting cost $9,000 a pop. That's why many Iowans fear such a disaster is increasingly likely as developers, spurred by more than $12 billion in federal incentives, propose to build lengthy CO2 pipelines across the Midwest. As the projects advance, many community members have questioned whether the proposed routes come too close to their homes and gathering places. An analysis by Inside Climate News found that some of the proposed routes fall within a couple miles, sometimes less than half a mile, from public schools, assisted living facilities, hospitals, and state prisons. As for how close is too close, experts say that's really hard to say. There are 2 pipelines currently proposed that would run through Iowa. Scientists are sounding the alarm over the effect of extreme heat on trees and plants in the Pacific Northwest. The warning comes after researchers suggested a heat wave in 2021, also known as the heat dome, scorched trees across the region. In a paper published in the journal Tree Physiology, one scientist argued the damage to the tree foliage during the extreme weather event was driven by heat and solar radiation rather than indirectly by drought caused by the extreme heat. The report comes as scientists in the Pacific Northwest have also linked the decline of 10 native tree species to drought in recent years. In many cases, conditions that have brought about the decline are known as hot droughts, characterized by above normal temperatures that dry out soil and air. Scientists say hot droughts can be far more damaging to trees than droughts that simply result from a lack of moisture, because they can cause hydraulic failure, a process where the water-carrying tissues inside them collapses. The White House made a deal with Native American tribes and conservation groups to study 14 dams on the Columbia River Basin. The settlement, which includes provisions geared towards the eventual removal of 4 of those dams, could end one of the nation's most high-profile legal disputes over the future of hydropower. It also adds to a growing national debate over what is and isn't clean energy. As part of the deal, the government will put about $300 million towards salmon restoration projects in the Pacific Northwest, including upgrades to existing hatcheries that have helped to preserve native fish populations. Native tribes in the area say the dams have hurt those native fish populations. The deal also includes a 5-year stay on litigation and a pledge to develop upwards of 3 gigawatts of tribally sponsored renewable energy production. The Biden administration said it expects the deal to spur more than $1 billion in new federal investments to wild fish restoration over the next decade. 5 gray wolves have been released into the wild by Colorado Parks and Wildlife, but their release didn't come without some opposition from local ranchers. They're worried livestock could potentially become prey. Still, a federal judge denied a request from Colorado's cattle industry to temporarily delay the wolf reintroduction in the state. The release also comes after Colorado voters passed a proposition during a statewide election in 2020, allowing state wildlife officials to take steps to begin reintroducing wolves to the state. The animals came from Oregon and are 2 young females, 2 juvenile males, and 1 adult male. They have been outfitted with GPS collars, which will help scientists keep track of their movements. The big hope now is that these wolves and others to be released in the future could create and maintain a self-sustaining wolf population in Colorado, something that has not existed for almost a century. And coming up, some new tech is helping a group of wildlife veterinarians monitor the health of an endangered pod of killer whales in the Pacific Northwest. More on their efforts is just ahead. Stay tuned.
This population is really small, about 75 animals, and they're facing a lot of threats. Boat disturbance and noise, loss of salmon, things like that, contaminants that are legacy in the system. And because the population is so small, we were now realizing that the health of every single individual animal is important.
Welcome back. A major discovery may hold some significant promise in the fight against plastic pollution. Researchers at Hokkaido University in Japan genetically engineered a new plastic-eating bacterium. The recently identified microorganism can break down polymers, a specific type of eco-friendly plastic commonly found in a variety of single-use items and packaging. The group's groundbreaking work, which was reported in a study published in Environmental Biology, aimed to devise some innovative solutions for addressing plastic pollution, as well as understanding plastic behavior in marine environments. Scotland's king of fish has been officially classified as an endangered species. The question now, can we save it? The International Union for Conservation of Nature added Atlantic salmon to its red list, warning that numbers are in steep decline and set to fall even more. It is predicted the population in Scottish rivers will have fallen by 63% between 2010 and 2025. Scientists are worried that Scotland's world-famous rivers, filled with leaping salmon, could one day be empty. As environmental groups sound the alarm over the declining numbers of salmon, a group of scientists are growing concerned about the well-being of a small population of orcas living in the Pacific Northwest. They say the pod of about 75 killer whales is in trouble as they face threats from pollution, boat traffic, and a lack of their primary food source, wild salmon. Researchers suggest the degradation of resources has caused some orcas in the pod to die recently. But now a team of veterinarians, marine biologists, and engineers are using some new tech, such as drones and infrared cameras, to track the whale's health. Joining us now to discuss is the Director of Science at CDOC Society, a marine conservation group at UC's Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, Dr. Joe Gatos. Dr. Joe, thanks for coming in. Can you describe what the researchers discovered when they approached a pod of orcas, killer whales, recently in the Pacific Northwest?
Right. So, Christina, we were out on the water in September, and we were pilot testing some of the scientific tools that we use to measure health in these animals. And we came up behind a group, and we noticed that a terrible breath, kind of like you go to a party and you walk by somebody and you're thinking, gosh, something is wrong here. And the more we positioned the boat, we were able to realize that that foul-smelling breath was actually coming from one adult female animal. And it was a bad sign because we had seen that before in animals that didn't survive. But fortunately, we were able to take a drone, fly into her expired breath, collect some samples, and then do some measurements, check her body temperature using an infrared camera to see that it was probably something transient, something that was not going to kill her, but something that probably had happened. And then the next day we were able to go out and check on her, and she was actually better, didn't have the smell, swimming normally and everything.
They're so incredible. I'm just watching this footage on the screen of the orcas swimming by your boat. I mean, they're fascinating animals.
Yeah.
And I know that you'll probably use this technology for a long time in the future. What can you guys expect to do long term?
Right. So we're working with NOAA, the federal agency, working with San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, Center for Whale Research, Wild Orca, SR3. All of us are developing these different tools that we can use to measure their health. And the idea is that one day we'll be able to keep the boat so far away that those animals won't even know that we're there. You know, they will come up to the boat, they're interested, but what we don't want to do is be a part of the problem. So we're trying to get all of these things that we can remotely sense. And then if we have to, we can do something like deliver a medication through a dart rifle, or maybe by providing oral medication through food or something like that. We want to be able to intervene when it's something that we've done. They've been hit by a propeller or something like that. We don't want an animal to die on our watch.
Is this just for orcas, or can we use it for other animals like dolphins?
That's a really good question. And I think that we can use this technology for a lot of other marine wildlife. And so these are big animals. You can't get them onto the boat. You can capture a dolphin, treat it, and let it go. But with the larger animals, humpback whales, killer whales, things like that, it's just not tenable to do that. So I think these technologies will be transferable to a lot of other marine wildlife.
You seem very passionate about this. What got you into this? Why do you do this work?
Well, I love this. I mean, look at the film of those animals. They're amazing. They're just beautiful. They're really smart. They live as long as we do. They have these relationships. It's just incredible to be able to work with them. And so I love animals, probably like you do and everybody else out there. I want to be a part of finding solutions to make sure they're around for a long time to come. Because
it's important, right?
It's critical. Yeah, we have to take care of our environment. Our environment takes care of us. In veterinary medicine, we call this One Health. The health of humans, the health of animals, the health of the environment, they're all intricately connected. If we don't have salmon, we don't have salmon for us to eat. If these animals are getting contaminants through their salmon, we're getting contaminants by eating those salmon. We're all connected.
Great points. Dr. Joe Gatos, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And stay with EarthX News. There's more coming up. A group of private landowners are turning to controlled burns as part of an effort to bolster forest health in the southeastern United States. Here's that story.
The longleaf pine in the United States is facing an existential crisis, and those looking to protect it are turning to an unlikely ally: fire. Prescribed burn associations are intentionally setting fires to certain areas in order to prevent uncontrollable wildfires that threaten the ecosystems that allow the pine and other plants to flourish.
This is called cane. It used to be very common in the sandhills, almost gone now because it requires fire. This is the reason my family burned right here, for this plant. And the reason this plant was important to my family, as I said, we were originally turpentiners. We burned to protect those turpentine trees from wildfires because they had sap on them, they would burn up.
In order for the plan to be a success, the prescribed burners have to work with private landowners. It's an operation that takes place across 140,000 square miles across the southeastern United States. But by focusing on specific areas, conservationists can pinpoint vulnerable areas to decrease the risks.
You look at your weather parameters, and you look at especially things like your wind conditions and your atmospheric stability to choose when that window, the ideal window.
Together, the group of private landowners is intentionally setting fires to prevent uncontrollable wildfires from devastating the region, depriving them of the fuel necessary to cause widespread destruction.
This is what it looked like before we took fire off the landscape. You would see these 2-foot burn scars, burn marks on the trees, because that's as tall as the fire got. There was not much fuel, so it came through at this level, burning everything up. Now, because we have so much fuel in the forest, it's catastrophic fires.
Thousands of landowners across the country are picking up the cause, starting their own new burn cooperatives by limiting blazes one at a time, connecting residents to their land, neighbors, and environments.
We were the first one, and I think now 52 counties out of our 100 counties in North Carolina are now covered by a PBA. And they've blown up in California, all over the Southeast. I think there's 24 in California now.
Using fire to prevent wildfires also comes with an additional benefit. It shaves undergrowth from the forest floors that would otherwise prevent seeds from germinating on bare soil. Again, providing that what could be a destructive force is also one that could promote life.
You can't come at fire without respect. And it is a powerful force, but it's also a healing source, a very tangible way to connect to the past and also guide the future.
And the future certainly looks a lot brighter for local forests thanks to the volunteers at Sandhills Prescribed Burn Association and the unlikely ally of fire. For EarthX, I'm Alex Salvi.
Alex Salvi, thank you. And before we leave you, polar scientists have recorded what they are calling a very lazy penguin. The group of researchers from the Ukraine recently shared this amazing video of the Arctic bird sliding down a hill on its tummy. The video was taken during an expedition at a research base in Antarctica, and researchers say this type of land movement is common for penguins to save energy, as penguins prefer to conserve energy whenever possible. The scientists also said they can accelerate up to 3 to 6 kilometers, or just about 4 miles per hour. That's all the time we have for this edition of EarthX News. Please join us again next week. I'm Christina Thompson.